All right, so this is my 540i. So it's been a couple thousand miles since I did a walk around video. As you can see, it's pretty dumped. So I want to do a second walk around video, and I also did some updates to the tune and the fuel that I'm running. So just talk about that a bit and see how you get 500 wheel torque out of your B58 and see how you can get close to 500 wheel horsepower at the same time. So first we'll just like walk around and like take a look at the body and everything. I'm actually going to show some of the imperfections and like things that come with riding so low to the ground. So you can see like a little scrape there. That one was actually mostly there before when I got the car, but it's gotten a little worse since I lowered the car. The other side has some similar damage right there, but hardly any, as you can see. I drive pretty attentively, and I pay attention to what I drive over, so I try not to destroy the bumper and the undercarriage. So let's just take a look. You can see like how much tire I've got tucked in there. So these are 245 40 19s. So I could technically have a shorter tire on this car and run a 245 35 19, I think, and then change my rear tires as well. But this is a good size, especially since I'm so low. Like, I still have a good amount of tire, a good amount of cushion between the road and the car. I don't get any rubbing here. The wheels just had some curb rash already when I got the car. You can see a little, like, there's some leaves and stuff like that gets caught because I'm riding so low to the ground, but otherwise it's pretty good. The side skirts, I would imagine, take most of the beating just because of going in and out of driveways a lot. I try to avoid really steep driveways so that I don't scrape, but sometimes it's just unavoidable at this height, which I know comes with it. I'm not complaining. It's just part of it. So this is the rear. You can see how much of the tire is tucked. So I'm running function and form coilovers. They're pretty much maxed out as far as ride height. They're not maxed out. They're maxed out in terms of low when it comes to ride height. They're 10K front, 7K rear coilovers, and they have shortened bodies because I wanted to ride a little bit lower in ride height, but I still wanted to retain that suspension travel. And to get a little more performance out of them, the rear coilovers are actually inverted monotubes, so they're a little stiffer, they're a little stronger, a little more beefy. And you can feel it in the ride of the car. Like, I've driven different cars with coilovers, and while the attitude of the car did change in terms of your head motion, like the stock suspension gives your head motion like more of a back and forth movement because it's softer, it's more compliant. And then when you get the coilovers and they're a little bit stiffer, you do get some up and down head motion, but not enough to bring you out of your seat or to make it uncomfortable. That's one thing I really love about the G30 specifically. Well, all the G chassis actually, like, you install coilovers and you still feel the quality of the car around it. Like, it doesn't change the NVH so much that you feel like you're riding in a different car that's loud or too rough now. Like, you might think it sounds ridiculous, but even at this ride height, the car rides pretty damn good. And my mom and dad can attest to that, and they're older, so they would definitely not like to ride in a car like this if it rode like shit. So yeah, this car actually does ride pretty good. When you're going over really fast, like an undulation in the road where it goes down and comes back up really quickly, you can get airborne, but that's with any coilover setup. Like, because you have less travel, it's much easier to get airborne on situations like that. So you want to be mindful of that when you're riding at this kind of ride height. You also want to have enough tire so that if you bump something or imperfections in the road, you're not tearing up your expensive wheels. These are just the factory wheels, but I do plan to get some wheels sometime this year. So it hasn't messed up any of my fitment in terms of my bumpers, anything like that. You can see the body straight along. You can see a little mark there on the side skirt. That's from being lowered, but again, like, it just comes with the territory. I'm not complaining too much. So this is just a walk around, and then I'm gonna start it up. We're gonna hear how it sounds. I actually need to work on my fitment of my exhaust tips here, because when I got my cutout installed, originally they were sticking out, but it seems like it moved a little bit. So I need to get that fitment checked out. I need to fix that. But let's start the car up and hear how it sounds. So as you can hear, the car is pretty loud on startup. On my Tune, I do have the startup roar turned on, so that's part of it. So most cars won't sound that loud on startup. But so right now I've got my exhaust cutout open, so that's why it's so loud. It's basically just dumping in the middle of the car. Got the hood open right now. Active grills opened up. Somehow they're still working at 65,000 miles. So this car has a really low P idle, especially when I'm running E85. I really love how it sounds. It's basically a straight pipe, but the B58 just sounds really good. Give it a couple blips. So it's pretty sharp on the blips. Sounds pretty damn good to my ears. Now let's take a look inside. So my carpets are a little dirty right now, but mine's got the luxury seating, which I love. I wish it had the adjustable upper backrest, but that's fine, I can manage. It's pretty clean. Actually bought this one off of CarMax, if you didn't see my last video. This one does not have sunshades. I was thinking about retrofitting that. Might do that as a project later. Do a video series on that. I definitely will retrofit soft close at some point because I really like that feature. So mine's pretty clean. One thing I did do to the car other than the tune is coating Comfort Plus. I did a whole video on that, so if you want to know how to do that, I'll pin that one up in the left right there. So check that out after this video. So let's go to Sport Individual. So when I put my car in Sport Individual, I've got it coded for drag mode on XHP. So it puts the transmission in Sport Plus, and I set drag mode to only activate at certain times. So when you're requesting like a certain load from the engine, like I think the threshold is 80% or 90%, then drag mode will activate in the transmission, which gives you a couple tenths off of your quarter mile times. I'm not running on the track right now, but I just like to have it just because it's cool, and I want to test it out and see how the car goes. It's been about 2,000 miles so far with the drag mode, and I haven't experienced any issues. I don't plan to run it like that forever or for a very long time. But I do want to get some good use out of it, and if that means getting a new transmission at some point or rebuilding mine, then so be it. But hopefully that's later than sooner. So the next thing I want to talk about is how do you get to 500 wheel torque on your B58 and on your 540i. So I'll step out and check under the hood. So right now I'm actually running a tank of full E85 through the car because I wanted to see how my butt dyno feels compared to my E40 tune. On my E40 tune, I put down 460 to the wheels and 508 wheel torque, something like that. So that's pretty good, and that was on a hot day here in LA. It was like probably close to 90 degrees that day, and it was really humid. And I was also running like probably less than a half a tank at that time. So it might be different numbers on a different day with a different dyno, but who cares? So what I love is that it's so easily achievable to get 500 wheel torque out of a car like this. So as soon as I got it, I went to San Diego to get the fuel pump there, the TU fuel pump. So TU pump has a little dome over it. It's a little bigger than the factory fuel pump that comes in the Gen 1 B58. Just in case you don't know what it looked like. I took all my engine covers off just for easy access, and I don't mind the extra ticks and extra sounds. Plus the G30 is so well insulated that you can hardly hear anything extra anyway. Here's the adjustments for my coilovers. I've got them set to 12 clicks from hard at all four corners. 12 clicks from hard. I just changed my expansion tank. This was leaking. It was leaking out of the side here. Now it's completely full. Not losing coolant anymore. I didn't get a low coolant warning light, so that's something to be aware of if you have a car like this. Your coolant tank might be leaking, and it might not show you on your dashboard that your coolant is actually low, because it might not be low, but you still want to get that changed. It was pretty easy. I didn't have to lift the car. There's a little like sheet metal tab here that I just bent this way out of the way so that you can clear the tank and get it out. But otherwise, you just got to disconnect a few hoses, and then there's you can kind of see down there where that white part meets the black. There's like basically a push pin that the coolant tank goes into. You got to pull it up out of that. You got to pull it with some force, so you want to make sure that your fingers aren't getting caught anywhere. I actually messed up my nail when I did that, because I pulled my nail off of the bed. So, but yeah, right now I'm running a full tank of E85 through the car. The thing that I do notice is that when I go to start the car in the morning, or I haven't started it in a couple of hours, the startup is pretty choppy. Like you get like kind of a hiccup at startup, and then it kind of rolls into a startup, and then it kind of evens out as the car is running because of just the nature of E85. Like I've seen that on a lot of cars. I'm sure a custom tune will iron that out. Haven't done that yet, but I'll do that soon. But for now, the butt dyno says that it's fairly close to what the E40 numbers were putting down, but yeah, I don't know. It seems like it may be lacking in some spots, particularly in the mid-range. Probably just because the TU fuel pump can only supply so much, although it is possible to run E85 on it. So yeah, that's one thing. Like if you're running your B58 and you want to run E85, all you need is a TU fuel pump and a tune, and like preferably a catless downpipe, but you don't really need that as long as you don't run your car too hard on your catted downpipe. You can get away with it. So it's really easy to run E85 on these cars. You don't need too much. A flex fuel sensor is probably smart. I have one on the way, but you don't necessarily need one, especially if you aren't mixing. If you're just running E85, even if you are mixing, you can still just use it like a calculator on the App Store. Those work pretty great, and that's what I did initially. One thing to note here is I never really noticed how far back the engine is in this car. Like, I know that the handling dynamics are great, but if you see, like, about cylinder 1 or cylinder 2 kind of lines up with the midpoint of the wheel. So you have effectively 3 or 4 cylinders behind the center point of the wheel. No wonder this car handles so good. You know, this is a big car. This is almost 4,000 pounds, but it still handles pretty damn good. You know, you can feel the weight of the car, but you also can throw it around. And when I added coilovers and when I put them at this ride height, the car has a tendency to want to oversteer now, especially with traction control in sport mode. To me, that's a fun thing. To others, that may not be so fun. That can also be remedied with an alignment and a couple changes to the settings on your coilovers. I may do that at some point, but I actually like the handling dynamics, and it changed it in a fun way for me. Like, it didn't make the car less capable of what it could do before. It just made it more than that and then some. So that's my favorite part about the coilovers. So next up for me is brakes. Right now I'm just on the standard brakes. I probably will, I don't know, man. Like, I was thinking of M-Sport, but these brakes are good size already. Like, I really just need some better rotors and then a good set of pads. You know, I'm probably not taking this car to the track a lot. You know, I might do it once or twice once I get that set up. But in terms of investing like $6,000 into brakes, I probably won't do that. Just because it's probably overkill for my power goals. But we'll see what happens. And the rear rotors. So if you didn't know, there's actually another version of gray brakes on G series cars, on G30s and I think G11 and G12. So there's a brake that's the size of the M-Sport caliper, but it's gray, and it has a solid rotor instead of drilled rotors. It's the same 4-piston design as the M-Sport, but the pistons are slightly smaller. And the brake pad, I think the material is slightly different. But those are a good alternative to M-Sport brakes for these cars. They're about, I think I saw a set on eBay for $1,600. Calipers, lines, and everything. And I think it came with rotors too, actually. All you would need is pads. So that's a worthwhile investment if you can't find the M-Sport brakes. And to me, the M-Sport brakes are like $3,500 new. So they're not $1,700 better than those gray brakes that you can find, and then just buy some new pads and rotors for it and have great brakes for half the cost. All right, now that we're standing outside the car with the exhaust cutout open, I'm gonna close it, and then you can see how the car basically sounds just like stock. So the exhaust cutout is now closed. You almost can't tell the car is on standing next to it. You get a slight hint of a rumble, but it's hard to tell where it's coming from. So exhaust cutout closed. And then here is open. I love that sound, that switchover sound. So let's hear it up close again. You can actually hear the motor a little bit if you listen closely. Beautiful. One thing that I noticed when I first got this car too is that it has functional aerodynamic air vents here. So these actually feed directly through from the wheel area, and it gets a lot of buildup in there. Like, you get a lot of dirt and a lot of shit in there. So I'll clean that out every now and then because I tend to get a lot of leaves and stuff like that, and whatever else you can see in there. So yeah, that's the walk around of my 540i. This one's a 2017 Gen 1 B58. I've had it for 15,000 miles now, I believe, and I've been tuned for 14,050 of them, and I haven't had a hiccup. Like, there was one time where I put the wrong fuel in the car. I did the wrong mix, and then I just changed the tune to adapt to it. So I got lucky there, but it wasn't the car's fault. That was my fault for being stupid. But yeah, like, these cars are super reliable. Like, when I got it, I changed the spark plugs. I checked the PCV system to make sure that it wasn't going bad and that it wasn't having a lot of buildup. You know, I checked the brakes. I checked everything out. The car looked good, and you know, you do a couple preventive maintenance items and then tune the car. Like, you often get pretty good results, and you can have peace of mind, which is, you know, that's priceless when you're driving one of your favorite cars. So next up in terms of mods, I may do, well, not maybe, I will, but just looking at which kind of front lips. I'm gonna do a rear spoiler. I'm gonna do some wheels at some point during the year. And then, you know, in terms of power, I'm not really sure where I want to go yet. I've been looking at hybrid turbos, but with all that comes with that, you know, the reliability, the you know, kind of not being a fully tested turbo in terms of the turbocharger itself, you know, like compared to like a Garrett or something like that. So I may go with a big boost in the future, go with their MPR 1200 kit, and then leave the bottom end stock, get a bigger fuel pump, port injection, and then kind of leave it from there. You know, I haven't broken anything on the car yet somehow, even though I've got a good amount of torque, and you know, I don't drive stupid, but I do have fun. Like, I drive fast when appropriate, when there's space. But yeah, so if you want to get 500 wheel torque and pretty much 500 wheel horsepower out of your B58, just run a little bit of ethanol, get yourself a upgraded fuel pump, get a tune, and go at it. Hope you enjoyed this video.